On December 21, 1988, a bomb hidden inside a Toshiba cassette player detonated in the forward cargo hold of Pan Am Flight 103. The explosion punched a 20-inch hole in the fuselage, and the plane fell 31,000 feet onto the quiet Scottish town of Lockerbie. We all know this story. It's a tragedy. It's terrorism. But if you look away from the crash site and look at the balance sheets, you see a very different story. We call this video Pan Am, the debt behind the bombing, because the truth is, the bomb didn't kill Pan Am. By the time that suitcase was loaded in Frankfurt, Pan Am was already a zombie. Today, we're not just investigating a crash, we're investigating a 20-year financial suicide. We're going to talk about why the coolest airline in the world was selling tickets to the moon while it couldn't afford gas on Earth. We'll expose the sky god culture, and we'll show you how one bad signature in 1966 doomed 270 people in 1988. To understand the death of Pan Am, you have to understand the ego of the man who built it, Juan Trippe. This guy was the space baron before Elon Musk existed. Trippe believed in the chosen instrument theory, the idea that the US government should support one airline to represent America. And spoiler alert, he thought that airline should be his. The arrogance was impressive. In the late 60s, Pan Am launched the first Moon Flights Club. You could call Pan Am and book a reservation for a commercial flight to the moon. They issued over 93,000 membership cards. Walter Cronkite had one. Ronald Reagan had one. They were taking reservations for flights departing in the year 2000. But here's the dark side. While they were printing these cute moon cards, the company was bleeding to death. They stopped taking reservations in 1971, not because the moon was hard to get to, but because the administrative burden was too high. They were firing 5,000 employees to save cash. Okay, quick question. If an airline today, say United or Delta, started selling tickets to Mars right now for a $100 deposit, would you buy one? Or would you assume it's a scam to pay off their quarterly losses? Let me know in the comments. I have a feeling I know the answer. 1966. The jet age is peaking. Juan Trippe walks into Boeing and makes the gamble that kills the company. He signs a contract for 25 Boeing 747s. The cost? $525 million. Adjusted for inflation, that is a $5 billion liability. Trippe's logic was simple. If you build a bigger plane, the cost per seat goes down. It's economies of scale. But that math only works if two things happen. 1, the plane has to be full. 2, fuel has to stay cheap. Juan Trippe bet the entire company on those two things. He went 0 for 2. When the first 747s rolled off the line in 1969, the engines weren't ready. Pratt & Whitney had a problem called ovalization. Basically, the engine casings were warping into ovals when they got hot, which is not great for a spinning turbine. So Boeing had these massive billion-dollar airframes sitting on the tarmac, but without engines, the 747 is tail-heavy. If you just park it, it tips over. So, to keep their brand-new flagship fleet from popping wheelies, Boeing hung massive blocks of concrete from the wings. That image, the queen of the skies shackled by concrete, is Pan Am. They were paying millions in interest on planes that couldn't fly. And when they finally did fly, the 1973 oil crisis hit. Fuel prices quadrupled. The 747 became a white elephant. While the accountants were screaming, the culture inside the airline was delusional. We call this the sky god syndrome. Robert Gant, a former pilot, describes a culture where the captain was a deity. He didn't just fly the plane, he commanded it. This hierarchy meant first officers were terrified to correct the captain. It wasn't just arrogance, it was dangerous. This lack of crew resource management contributed to disasters, including Tenerife. But in the cabin, they were still pretending it was the roaring 20s. Did you know Pan Am flight attendants used to serve flaming baked Alaska on a plane in an era of flammable fabrics? Imagine the cognitive dissonance. You're working for a bankrupt company, serving flaming desserts to a half-empty cabin while your paycheck is bouncing. So, how do you fix a dying airline? Pan Am decided the answer was buy another airline that hates us. In 1980, they bought National Airlines for $374 million. They went into a bidding war and paid double what it was worth. It was a disaster. Pan Am was aristocratic, National was scrappy. The employees hated each other. Pan Am had to raise National's salaries to match their own, which destroyed the cost savings. They spent $374 million to buy a civil war. To pay for this mess, they started selling the crown jewels. 1980, they sell the Pan Am building in New York for $400 million. That iconic building? Gone. They sold their headquarters to pay off the debt on the planes that were emptying their bank accounts. 1981, they sell Intercontinental Hotels for $500 million. This was their most profitable division. It was the only thing making money. They sold their safety net just to keep the gliders flying for a few more years. 1985, the big one. They sold their Pacific division to United Airlines for $750 million. They sold the Asian market, the future of the global economy, just to keep the lights on. By 1986, Pan Am was basically an Atlantic-only airline. Before we get to Lockerbie, let's look at the Pan Am curse through one specific plane, Clipper Victor. This plane flew the very first commercial 747 flight in history, 1970. It was the celebrity of the fleet. 6 months later, it became the first 747 to be hijacked, flown to Havana. Fidel Castro literally came out to the runway to meet it because he wanted to tour the restaurant in the sky. 7 years later, Clipper Victor was destroyed in the Tenerife airport disaster. It collided with a KLM 747 in the fog. 583 people died. First flight, first hijack, worst accident. That is the kind of luck Pan Am was having. Then there was Clipper Maid of the Seas. By 1988, she was an old bird, 15 years of service. When she crashed in Lockerbie, a local resident walking his dog saw the outline of a plane dropping nose down. That crash wasn't just a tragedy, it was a foreclosure. At that moment, Pan Am had almost zero cash. The plane was actually worth more as an insurance payout than as a flying asset. That is a grim place to be. December 21, 1988, a brown Samsonite suitcase is loaded onto the plane. Here's the thing, that bag didn't have a passenger. Under the rules, if the passenger isn't on board, the bag doesn't go. But it did. Why? Because Pan Am security in Frankfurt was cutting costs. They were X-raying bags instead of matching them to passengers because it was faster. A jury later found Pan Am guilty of willful misconduct. They ignored the rules to save money. After Lockerbie, the blue meatball logo became a symbol of danger. Bookings on the Atlantic route, the only route they had left, collapsed. They lost $400 million in revenue in a single year. The fear destroyed what little cash they had left. December 21, 1991, Delta pulled the plug. The chosen instrument was dead. One Trippy built a machine that destroyed itself. It wasn't terrorism that killed Pan Am. Terrorism was just the final push. It was debt. It was hubris. Pan Am is gone. But the lesson is right there in the balance sheet. If you leverage your future to pay for your ego, Eventually, the bill comes due. If you want to see another example of Wall Street getting fooled by a liquid asset, click here to watch the Great Salad Oil Scandal.